它这样就可以拍很多了，但我们已经闻得到很多很浓的威士忌的味道嘞。啊 ，that smells good.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very strong this morning.
Yeah.
You guys see the old maltings there?
Yeah. Raisin. Really fruity.
It gets stronger. Welcome into mash house number 1, and it is in here that we add our third ingredient of whiskey. So we've had water, we've had the barley, and this is where we add our yeast. Down there you can see our 8 wash bags. Behind you, that is the control panel. Now this is manned 24/7, and that is where they monitor everything. So if there is a problem at 3 in the morning, there is someone here to deal with it. This behind you there, that is the mash tub, and it is in there that we add our grist. Every cycle we put 12.5 tons of grist into the mash tub. Hot spring water comes in through the top, and over 6.5 hours the whole mixture is slowly turned so that starch dissolves into the water. We heat it up to precisely 63.5 degrees Celsius. Very specific, but that is because at 63 degrees an enzyme in barley turns starch into sugar, and it's now sugar that we want. After these 6.5 hours we get this liquid. This is called wort, and this is just sugar water basically. Now the wort gets pumped out of the bottom of the mash tun and then up and into the wash bags.
Praticamente ha detto che lo portano a 63 gradi perché così l'amido diventa zucchero, che è quello che vogliono, uguale a quello che ti ha spiegato Carlo sulla birra.
Sugar, warm water and yeast, mixed fermentation and alcohol. So that's how we get the alcohol into the whiskey, and we leave it in there for 75 hours, which is longer than most distilleries will do it, to develop the flavors. So at the beginning it has nutty popcorn flavors, and then at the end it gets dried fruit Christmas cake flavors. We do not put any fruits and we do not put any popcorn into the wash bags. It's just the natural maturing that brings the flavors out. Now, this is fresh, love it. After the 75 hours, we get this liquid. This is called wash. It is about 9% alcohol, and this is basically just beer but without the hops. So we have made a bad tasting beer, and it is the wash that we take on to the next stage of whiskey making. Gross.
Assomiglia molto a una birra.
Thank you so much, look at that. Now there is a window on either side of the mash tun. They show the same thing.
È come il nostro tino di filtrazione che separa la buccia dal liquido e vedi che piano piano gira.
Questo è molto caldo.
Sì.
La lavorazione cambia solo da quello step là poi. 对啊，慢慢的，慢慢的。对。真酷炫。对啊，毕竟不是那么多女生想要在酒厂工作啊。在那个大酒厂，大部分都是在前台。
And Glen Ord Distillery, is that a different one or sister? Or? That's us. Oh, just a different name.
And then we go only to Asia. Singleton and Glen Ord goes to Asia. Singleton and Glen goes to America. Singleton and Ducktown goes.
But it's all the same.
We are
right.
no, so we change the flavor depending where it goes.
Oh, okay, like based on like customer.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I've not explained how we do that yet, so don't worry, you've not missed that. Yeah. We're going that way.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, we're going that way. Yeah.
Wow, it's huge.
They're massive, yeah.
Yeah.
Just wood. Because we don't know it.
我的钥匙可真的不能脱掉下去了。
So if you have taken a look down, you can see how big the wash bags are. They are around 30 feet high, holding maximum of 59,000 litres each, and they work in pairs. So these two are the same, and then each pair is slightly different times, so there's always wash ready. Now the next room is still house 1, and they are doing upgrades in there. So we are going into still house 2, which is much bigger anyway, so it's pretty good. So we're going to go back that way.
Excuse me, which room temperature? It's around 17.
Once they're both full,
闻起来有点麦芽牛奶的味道，突然之间麦芽的味道。哦，Yeah， 我们好像应该待在这一侧才去，我都没注意到。Oh no！ 我很喜欢喝麦芽牛奶，我喜欢喝麦芽牛奶。哦，亲哪个啊？Mass 会吧？不知道。哦。
Safety points. Lovely, okay, so the next room, that's the still house. This is the room where you cannot take any photos. You can't use your phone at all. So if you keep your phone in your pocket until you are stood on the mat. So I'll point the mat out to you and you can take all the photos you want. Because there's quite a lot of us. If the first people, you take your pictures and then move off to the side so the next group can come in. It is so loud and hot in there. Generally, so we'll see if the stills are on. If the stills are on, it's so loud and hot in there that we won't stay in for long. We'll basically go in, take some pictures, I'll point some things out, and then we'll discuss it out here, okay? There are some stairs up there. Are you all okay with stairs? Yeah, cool. The flooring is grating. You can see down. Is everyone okay with heights?
Yeah.
Good. They are in the pot still shape and they are all made out of copper. The copper does affect the flavour. It gives the spirits a good depth of flavour, and the shape of the pot still increases the amount of time the spirits have touching the metal. So the longer the spirits touch the metal, the more flavour it has as well. Now the stills work in two sets of 4. So the first 4 stills are called the wash stills, and the second 4 stills are the spirit stills. Now the wash gets pumped out of the wash bags and up and into the first 4 stills, into the wash stills, and that gets heated up to just below boiling point. So alcohol evaporates, but most of the water does not. So it evaporates up to the top, goes into the swan neck, which was the pipe. It cools into a liquid and falls on the other side. That is called low wines, and that is around 25% alcohol. The low wines then gets pumped into the second 4 stills, into the spirit stills, and again that gets heated up, alcohol evaporates to the top, into the swan neck, cools into a liquid and falls. So this is how you double distill whiskey, and that liquid is called new spirits. Now the new spirits gets divided into 3 groups depending on how much alcohol it has in it. We call it the head, the heart and the tail. The head is everything above 75% alcohol. The tail is below 55, and the heart is everything between 75 and 55% alcohol, and it's the heart that we want for whiskey making. Okay. New spirits is also basically just gin. So we made beer, we turned it into gin, and we'll then turn that into whiskey.
Oh, okay.
Now every single year our one distillery here produces 16 million bottles worth of whiskey. 16 million, 1-6, yeah. Out of the 3 Singletons, we all produce together 20.5 million. So we are by far the biggest out of the 3 Singletons. but 16 million bottles a year is too much for us here on site. We cannot store that much whiskey. We're just small, you know, we're that big. So exactly, yeah. So I was at Talisker recently. So I drink it. Yeah. It's only 65% alcohol. I'm doing very well this morning. Don't worry. I was in Talisker. Talisker produce around 2 million bottles a year, so like teeny tiny in comparison to us. And their warehouses, if they stored it on Skye, would have to take up 4 football pitches worth of land. And we are significantly bigger than that. So the new spirits is the last thing we make here. That gets put into a tanker that is hopefully still there when we go past, and it is driven south to a little town near the England-Scotland border, still in Scotland. And they take in the spirits, they store it all, they then bottle and ship everything out from there. Now, we do store some whiskey on site though, so we're going to go inside to the warehouses, okay?
And this is for America.
So we are
Asia, okay, got it.
So the Glendale will go to America.
So this is like a different area?
Yeah, so they are
？Nearby
这
or?
老兄可
they're
能
in Speyside.
有点难听到，
Between here and Aberdeen.
Okay, cool.
哦，他刚对哦，他错过了一整个一部分
We'll，see.
Yeah, so,
忘记了。
they're both in a town called Dufftown.
Dufftown.
Yeah,
And
so-
it's still Singleton, but in Dufftown.
Yeah, so one of them is the Singleton Dufftown, and
Got
the
it.
other is the Singleton Glen. They're about 50 miles.
Got it.
But neither of them have whiskey centers.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, you might find it. But yeah.
He's still there. New spirits tank.
Wow, cool.
Use the new spirits and ship that overseas to be matured there. It's still whiskey, it's just not Scottish whiskey at that point. Rule number 2 is that the whiskey must be aged for a minimum of 3 years inside of oak casks. So every cask in here is made out of oak, and we primarily use 2 kinds. We use American oak and European oak. The American oak used to hold bourbon, and the European oak used to hold fortified wine like sherry, port, or spiced rum. We actually have one special release that you're actually trying today, which is great. One of the whiskies you're trying today is actually matured in ex-Chardonnay casks as well. So most of the differences in the flavors of the whiskey comes from the cask itself. Every single small change makes a difference, but most of the changes come from the casks. Now, 3 years and 1 day after the new spirit goes into the cask, you can legally call what's inside whiskey. If 3 is the very youngest a whiskey can be, Singleton, we like to practice slow craft. And that's just us taking our time with every step to produce the best whiskey. So it's in the washbacks longer, it's double distilled, and the youngest whiskey we produce is actually a 12-year-old whiskey.
Wow.
So 12 full years inside the cask before we start bottling it, with only one exception, one small exception. It's a whiskey you can only buy in the visitor centre, and that is the 11-year-old Singleton. It's the only 11-year-old in the world, but it's part of the bottle, your own experience. It's loads of fun. You get an empty bottle, you write your own label on it, you pull it straight from the cask. People do it for like anniversaries and birthdays and things like that. It's so much fun. But that's the only exception to the rule. So for our story, 12 is the youngest. I think the oldest we have is the 54-year-old. Did you see the 54-year-old in the shot? Yeah. So you guys might have seen it yet. It is very cheap, yeah. It's only £28,800 a bottle. So, yes, no, no, yes, takers. Birthday, exactly. Yeah, we were really close the other day. It was a very lovely man in from Singapore. He was on a big European tour, and he was like, "Oh yeah, talk to me about this, yeah, and this." And we were like, "Oh my God, hello, sir. Yes, this." He was like genuinely, and the only reason he didn't buy it was because he was still on his tour, and we couldn't ship it to Singapore. So he did say he may come back. We'll see, honestly, but you know, one day we will sell it and we'll get something else exciting in, so who knows what that will be. But unfortunately for me, we do not get commission, so if I'm the one who sold it, they'd just be like, good job, Natalie, well done. Thank you so much. Anyway, if you bought it, would you drink it? Would you drink the 54-year-old? Would you open the bottle?
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. No, yeah, I would. You know, like if I bought it, if I have that much money to buy a bottle of whiskey, I don't need the money. I'm gonna open that thing up. Sure. We could club together. We could all put money together, and we could then buy it. We could sit in the bar and drink it like wealthy people. Honestly, one day soon. Who knows? So, I've gone on a tangent. What were we talking about?
The casks.
Yeah, oh yes, okay, so 3 rules then. So, made in Scotland, 3 years in the cask, and then the final rule is that the whiskey has to be stored inside of a bonded warehouse. And that's just about the tax. So no tax is paid on whiskey coming in, tax is paid when it leaves again. And the reason for that is we don't actually know how much whiskey is in any of the casks until we open it, because we lose between 1% and 2% every year due to evaporation. So until you open it, exactly, yeah. So until you open it, we don't know how much is in there, so we can't pay the right amount of tax on it, and the government is very strict about how much tax they want to be paid. So we legally, if you look at the door behind you there, at the bottom there's that white notice from Customs and Excise. So every time the cask leaves the building, we have someone from the government here. We love that when they come up. But, yeah, the angel shell. Obviously, we know what evaporation is. The casks are not lined with anything. There's no plastic or anything. It's just the wood. But back in history, men didn't know what evaporation was, and they didn't know where their whiskey was going. So the only explanation that they could come up with was that the whiskey was so good that at night the angels would come down and take their share of it. So that's why it smells so nice in this room, is because what you can smell is actually whiskey. Now, if you want to take a look at my 2 kinds of casks.
Casks.
It's in the tanker. Oh, it's gone. There was a tanker there. Put it into there. Yes. Lovely. So these 2 smaller ones here, those are the American. So that's the ex-bourbon casks. And then this larger one here, this is the European one. So this is the ex-wine cask. They call this style the hogshead, because if you imagine, it's got 2 big ears just here. It kind of looks like a hogshead. That's why a lot of pubs and things are called the hogshead, like the one in Harry Potter, is because of the shape of the cask. And what goes into the 2 kinds of casks is exactly the same. It's all the new spirits, but what comes out on the other side is completely different. Because when they held either bourbon or wine, some of that will have seeped into the wood, and then as the whiskey matures, some of that comes back out and flavors the whiskey. So the bourbon casks give the whiskey all the very sweet flavors, vanilla, chocolate, honey, caramel, and then the wine casks give the whiskey all the very fruity flavors. And it is in mixing the 2 together in different proportions that we can create different varieties of whiskey. And this is how we tailor our whiskies to the 3 different markets around the world with the 3 singletons. So the singleton of Glendullen that goes to America generally has more bourbon casks in it, because I'm told people in America like and drink quite a lot of bourbon. Dufftown that goes to Europe generally has more wine cask in it, because we in Europe like a lot of wine. And then we at Glen Ord, we go to Asia, like a nice sweet, fruity, balanced whiskey. So it's a nice mix between the two. But if you are mixing casks from the same distillery together, it is not a blended whiskey. A blended whiskey is when you mix 2 or more different distilleries together. So if we added 1 drop of Talisker into this would be a blended whiskey. If they're all from the same one, like all 3 of these are Glen Ord, they call it a marriage of whiskies, and you still call it a single malt at the end, even if it's got 2, 3, 100, 1,000 casks inside of it, because it is the malt, it's the barley that we produced is the single one of it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one of the bourbons and then the wine. I want you to come along, take a smell of this one, and then come up to the wine, you'll see how different they are.
Annuso per primo.
Empty barrel.
There is whiskey in them.
Oh,
Do
there
not
is.
drop things in them. So I'll take one, yes. I don't know.
Ma senti diverso?
It's caramel and chocolate.
Metto in fila.
Sono già spronta così.
Come si prende ciò?
Per il mercato americano.
Apa di sini? Hah?
That one's being signed off, that one's just for, but yeah, there is whiskey inside. It's not dropped.
看来有人不是很喜欢。
It's not vodka.
Oh.
Yeah, so vodka's tell it all. 这个比较好。
真的哦、
Yeah, vodka, that's what this office was, so that was the tax man, so they can track back. We have to do that anymore. How many millions of casks we have? Okay, let's take a poll then. So hands up if you like the American best. Who likes the first one best? Okay, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Who likes the second? Who likes the wine? Look at that. All right, wine wins today. You're all wrong. Clearly, it's the American one. That was much nicer, right? Okay. Who doesn't like either of them though? Who doesn't like them? Who does not like either cask?
Oh, you'll be crying.
Yeah? No? Yeah? Good, good. Correct answer. We get a lot of people through who say that they don't like whiskey. And we just say that you've not found the right whiskey for you, yeah, obviously. Because there is over 1,200 different kinds of whiskey that you can buy in this country alone. And if you didn't like one of them, it would be very surprising. But it is like a small drop in the ocean to how many there could be. Because every single cask is different. A sherry cask is going to taste very different to a port cask, to a Chardonnay cask. Good wine years, bad wine years. The different bourbons are all going to taste different. So on site alone, we have over 8,000 different kinds of whiskey. And if you didn't like one of them, it'd be very surprising. And that doesn't include however many millions of casks there are in Leven as well. You start mixing them together to create almost infinite numbers of possibility, because 50-50 is going to be different to 50-50, 40-60. Yeah. Thank you. Oh my God, it's too early. 40-60. You can mix more than 2, obviously. You start mixing the ages together. If you mix different ages, say you mix a 20-year-old whiskey with a 10-year-old whiskey, you do not get a 15-year-old whiskey. It does not average into the middle, it defaults to the lower. So you would have a 10-year-old whiskey. So if something is bottled as a 12-year-old whiskey, the minimum it has in it is a 12. It could have a 30-year-old in it, but they can't call it a 30-year-old. So if you add one drop of 3-year-old into the 54-year-old, you have a 3-year-old. It might be very nice. So far, I don't think anyone's tried it. Again, we can do that. When we buy it later, we can mix whatever we want with it. Now we can use the casks more than once as well. So bourbon, they can only use their casks one time, but they send them to us and we can reuse both of them up to 4 or 5 times. And every time you reuse it, there's less and less bourbon or wine inside the wood to come and flavor the whiskey. So it's another way that there's even more variety. But you can see this here is, you see that? Yeah. So this is the American. So you see it's been burned on the inside. We call it charring. And the reason they do that is because American oak has got a very tight grain, and in burning it, it opens out that grain and it lets more bourbon into the whiskey. Whereas the European has not been burned on the inside, because European oak has got a much looser grain structure, so we don't need to burn it to let the wine flavors out. And every time we reuse it, we shave a small amount off of the inside. You can actually see it on this one. You see the light and the dark? That's where the wine has soaked into the wood. So shaving a bit off means you access more of the flavors in it. And then depending on how old the whiskey inside the cask is, how long it's been in there, the cask can be over 100 years old before we start retiring them. So we do get good use out of them. And they then get sent away and be made into furniture or flower planters and everything like that. So they do have quite a nice long life. Now, are you guys ready to try your whiskey? Yeah? Cool. We're going to go inside.
Oh. Oh, there we go.
Nice.
If you open that and take a seat.
Back to where we started. Yeah.
La pompa, tiriamo fuori il whisky dalla bocca e poi mettiamo il bicchiere. Più bianco, vabbè. E adesso bianco.
Che bello. Yeah. No, 我们就坐这里吧。好啊。 Oh, of course.
And then you do 1 and 2, is that okay? Look at that, is everyone sitting together? Yeah? Okay.
这是一个大杯的，我知道这是什么，这是水啊，应该是肉。
So you guys have got chunks of water. I need to start by taking a nice glass of water, and you can drink that in between your whiskies. Now, who has the little corks, the little chunks?
Sorry.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. 我刚刚在拿这个。
Tokens. Lovely, thank you.
And here we have one.
Perfect. I'm going to put that there so I remember. Perfect, okay.
谢谢宝宝。
Yeah, so start with water. Now, you have got 3 whiskies in front of you, and we are going to be working from left to right. Each one of them comes from one of our 3 different Singleton distilleries, so you'll get a chance to see the different flavour profiles for the different markets around the world. And there is a lot that you can tell about a whiskey before you drink it. First thing is the colour. So I want you to take your first whiskey on the left and hold that up to the light so you can really appreciate the colour of it. Now, this whiskey is a very nice medium golden brown colour, but the colour can vary very significantly. These two whiskies are the same, they're in the same bottle, they're in the same colour bottle, two different colours. It could be that this is a very young whiskey and it's not had a lot of time inside the cask to pick up the colour of the wood. This is a 17-year-old and this is an 18-year-old whiskey. So the age is probably not the difference for the colour, not the reason for the difference in the colour. It could be that this is from a cask that we've used lots of times before, but the main difference for the main reason for the difference in the colour is the different kind of casks. So the bourbon casks are made out of white oak and will generally give a much lighter expression of whiskey than the wine casks that will give a much darker expression of whiskey. So good chances is if you have a very light coloured whiskey, it is a sweeter whiskey than a dark one that is a much fruitier one. And after saying that, the second whiskey you're going to be having is going to break that rule. So obviously huge exceptions to it. Next thing, exactly, yeah. So that one is a very light coloured whiskey and it's not from a bourbon cask. So obviously exceptions to all the rules, yeah. So the next thing I want you to do with the same whiskey number 1, I want you to hold that up to the light, yeah, so the first one, yeah. Swill it as high as you possibly can and then hold that up and you should be able to see what they call the whiskey tears, so the whiskey legs. It's a really fine layer of oil on the top of the whiskey. It looks kind of like mountains. It comes from the wood, and the tears tell you a story. So if they fall very quickly, it's a very light whiskey. If they fall very slowly, it's a much richer whiskey. And it could be you like a light whiskey, it could be you like a richer whiskey. You might like a light whiskey for a party or a rich whiskey for sitting by yourself drinking. That's entirely up to you. But this whiskey, actually, look at that, my wall of whiskey's working. This is a very light coloured whiskey and is actually from bourbon casks. So this one is our distillery exclusive, which means you can only buy it in this building here. And the tears on this one fall basically like water. But one of the ones you're going to try in a second, the tears fall very, very slowly. So it's just a fun thing to take a look at. Next is the smell. So don't be shy, take the glass, take the biggest smell you can of that whiskey. Usually on the first smell, mostly what you can just pick up is just alcohol.
Yeah.
So if you smell it a second time, so smell it again. Usually just alcohol again. But if you smell it a third time, the third time is different, I promise. I'm not just messing with you. It's really strange. So smelling it 3 times. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. The brain starts ignoring the alcohol, basically.
Yeah.
And it then starts picking up on the different flavour notes, whether that's honey, whether that's apricots. So I won't tell you what you should be smelling, because if you can smell apricots and nobody else can smell apricots, doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that that's what you can smell. Now, for everyone who is driving with the little course, for everyone who is not driving even, I want you to try a small amount of your whiskey. Do not shot the entire glass at once. Try and keep it, honestly, it really upsets me. Try and keep it in your mouth for a second and then drink it, okay? No. So, try your first whiskey now.
Oh no.
And you're not allowed to keep it that.
Hai detto proprio di farlo assaggiare e usare tutto il video.
So you get, so for everyone not driving, so you'll take yours away, don't worry. You still get them, you just have them afterwards, yeah. Yes. Now you've got jugs with water droppers. I want you to take your water dropper, put 2 drops of water into that whiskey, give it a quick mix and try it again. And you'll be really surprised what a big difference just 2 drops of water is going to make.
Dice di metterci 2 gocce d'acqua.
They've given you water.
Vedere come cambia.
Not allowed to drink anything.
So what the water does, that just breaks up the oil on the top and it opens out the flavors. And it might be you think it's stronger, it might be you think it's not as strong, you might like it before, you might like it after. Which one, sorry?
What does it happen?
It breaks up the oil on the top.
Oh, yeah.
It smells like chocolate.
So you took a sip, then you
I put you dry. It's more palatable, at least for me.
That's fair. Now, I want you to move on to whiskey number 2, onto the middle one, do the same thing, look at the color, take a look at the tears, smell it, try it with the water.
Oh,
Just be clear with tears, right? Just be clear, like the tears are like when you smell it, it's
Yeah, yeah.
thing coming down.
Yeah, so you can see this one has no pattern at all. The glass whereas this one's got a pattern. So that's what you're looking for. Yeah, so this one's a bit hard because the tears are very, very light and they kind of break up. Whereas if you use the swirl this word for me.
Non ho capito bene, ma il sapore
闻起来很烈。
Looks like mountains. Sure, so it's
烤水果，
应该就是这个吧。
kind of an indication if they
你
really
看，它根本没有掉下来。
超级浓，比较稠一点，代表油比较多了。喝一口吗？
So I'll tell you what you're drinking then. You don't like that one? That's fair. That's okay. There's a reason for that. So whiskey number 1. This was the first whiskey. Is the 12-year-old from the Dufftown Distillery. Now, if you are in the shop and you want one of the Singletons, the 3 Singletons bottles look very similar. They're very different whiskies. So it says the name of the distillery just under there. You see it says Dufftown just there. It says Dufftown. So this is the distillery that goes to Europe. Yes. So you can buy this one in the shops here and also buy it outside, obviously. And this one has more of the wine casks in it. So you say this one is a fruitier number 1. Yes. Very nice. But it looks very, very similar.
Yes, yes.
So with the wine casks, they say with the wine casks you can generally feel that one more in your cheeks, whereas the bourbon casks you can feel that one more on your lips. Now, have you tried whiskey number 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, no? So whiskey number 2 is actually our 2023 special release. So usually people on the tours do not get this whiskey. This one they are using this month because it is our malt of the month. So every year the distilleries come out with their special releases, and every year there's a theme. And this year the theme was travel, and we got France. So I have a theory about this, and so far only one person has ever agreed with me. But Beauty and the Beast is set in France. Does she look like Belle from Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah.
Yes. 2 people love
Yeah.
her, like Belle from Beauty and the
Belle
Beast.
from Beauty
You know when she like dances with the yellow dress? You don't agree? Love it. I have one person. Either way, this is the one that's matured in ex-Chardonnay casks, because obviously Chardonnay from France. So that's why it's a very light-coloured whiskey, even though it's from a wine cask instead. So this one is actually from the Glen Ord Distillery. So this is for the American market. This is the second one, yes. So this one, they say, has very buttery notes, they say, and obviously then with the Chardonnay into that. I mean, most of them are
怎么样？ 小宝宝不太喜欢。
Malt. Yeah. Without the one? Yeah, without.
Okay, yeah. So this one. All right, guys. So we've had two people who say this is a very strong whiskey. That is because this one is actually 55% alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So it does have more alcohol in it than normal. They call this a cask strength whiskey. So this is the strength that it comes out of the cask at. So if you think it is stronger, you are correct. But generally, if you want to add 2 more drops of water or 3 more drops of water, you might find it to sort of break up a little bit. So there is no maximum number of drops of water you can put in. You can keep adding water as long as you like. Now, I want you to move on to, sorry.
55.
Yes. So move on to whiskey number 3. So on to the third and final whiskey. This whiskey is very different from the first 2.
它是金色的杯中。
If you have any of the first 2 left, really compare it. The colors in this range you've got are so very different.
嗯。
And this whiskey is our whiskey. So this is the one from Glen Ord. Just here.
This is from here.
This is our one, yeah. This is Glen Ord. This is the celebratory whiskey. Now, this whiskey, you'll notice, does not have an age on it at all.
Yeah.
There is a reason for that. Quite a lot of whiskies do not have ages on it, like the distiller exclusive doesn't either. And they call it a non-aged statement or a flavor-led whiskey, because there's a lot of people in the world who won't even try younger whiskies. They think a younger whiskey is not as good as an older whiskey. It doesn't mean it's better or worse, it just means it's a different flavor. And you could really like a 12-year-old whiskey, whereas you might not like the 54-year-old. So in not having an age on the bottle, you have to focus on the taste, not just on the number. Now, if you take a look at the bottom of this bottle here, you'll see it's got a teeny tiny little signature on it. And that is Maureen Robinson. So I get asked a lot, how do we make sure that, you know, like if you're mixing casks, who makes sure they, you know, like you come up with new ones, or who makes sure that a 12-year-old will always taste like a 12-year-old? Because obviously we produce a lot of the 12-year-old. The wine cask can hold around 600 bottles, the bourbon casks are around 400 to 500. Obviously, we're not going to just use one cask to make the 12-year-old, but there are people in charge of making sure a 12-year-old will always taste like a 12-year-old, or that the 15, 18-year-old always tastes the same. And those people are called the master blenders. And they know if they pull 1% from one cask and 10% from another, that it'll equal out into a completely consistent product all the way through. It's also the master blender's job to come up with new and exciting special release and limited edition whiskies. So Maureen Robinson was one of our master blenders for 45 years before she retired 2 years ago in July at this point. And one of her final commissions with the team was to create this whiskey. Now, 2 years ago in July, so same month, our visitor centre reopened after a massive multi-million-pound upgrade. So before that, our visitor centre was very, very small. It was essentially just the size of this room in the area that we started in. It was very dark, so we're very happy to have a lovely new shiny building going on, but the commission was to celebrate that reopening, hence the celebratory. Now, have you tried this whiskey? Yes? So they got to try whatever they wanted, and they eventually settled on 100% ex-sherry casks. So you might be able to taste the sherry influence in this cask. And they only managed to make 3,000 bottles of this one. And as it's been on sale for 2 years at this point, we don't have very many left. So we're going to have to choose something different to have the tastings very soon. So again, you guys are very lucky to have both the celebratory and the 14-year-old special release as well. So generally you don't get this kind of range, which is very nice.
How many degrees?
How many
Degrees?
alcohol in it? Yeah. So this one also has has 51.8% alcohol. This one, yes. So 51.8% alcohol in this one. So both of these have more alcohol than normal. So I get asked a lot, what is the right way to drink whiskey? People have very strong opinions on what is the correct way to drink whiskey. They say, oh, you can't put water in it, you can't put ice in whiskey, you can't do this, that, and the other. And the only correct way to drink your whiskey is however you want to drink your whiskey. If you want to put water, you want to put 8 drops of water in it, you want to put ice in it, you put it in Coke, you put it in coffee, live your life, you know? If you have bought it with your own money, then you should be able to do whatever you want with it. But in order to get whiskey from cask strength to 40%, which is the legal minimum, they add water to it. So most whiskey already has a lot of water in it, so adding a couple of extra drops really shouldn't make that much of a difference. Now we'll take a poll, hands up, who likes the 12-year-old the best? One person, 2, this is number 1, yeah? Number 1, okay. Number 2, who likes the 14-year-old?
No one.
No one, love it. Who likes the celebratory? Oh, look at that, okay, pretty good. So that's very unusual. Usually it's a 50-50, well 50-50, that's not right. 30, 30, 30, is that right? It's usually an even split between them. But I want to thank you all very much for coming. As a thank you, you do also get a 10% discount in the shop as well. You just let whoever it is on the till know. It's probably going to be me, but again, you remind me of it. We'll give you your discount. I think you should also get an email asking you to leave a review. And again, if you like the tour, it's Natalie. If you didn't like the tour, my name is Keith. Playing games, don't worry, likes it. And again, if you got any really ugly photos of me, please post them to TripAdvisor because I love to see them. But I'm not going to take your whiskies away from you. You can pick up the whole wooden stave and take that into the bar. And for those of you with the corks, I'm going to give you your bottles as well. Okay. But thank you all very much for coming. And I hope you So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You go.
Oh no.
Cheers.
I can take photo for both of you.
No, that's the cream.
Thank you.
That's for you.
You don't want a photo of us?
Picture with Natalie.
Picture with Natalie.
Sure. Why
These
not?
are empty. So you pour those into it. So if you take yours into the bar, yeah, it's easier for you. Come in behind you. I'm done.
你说什么？好啊。
Lovely. So these are empty. You pour your whiskies into it. So take your whiskey into the bar and you can pour it into it. Okay?
Okay.
There you go. That's
你也想要一个外带？
These are empty. So take your whiskies out into the bar with these and pour them in. Okay? What do you want me to take?
Or only for the driver?
Do you want a picture?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll give it back. Yes, so these are
Excuse me.
You can take them if you want. Yeah, you can take them. That's okay.
等一下，等他把那个大鱼
他应该会大家都发一个。Natalie, my girlfriend would like to also take away
We
her
can only do
whiskey.
it for the driver,
Ah,
unfortunately,
okay.
but you can fit more than one glass into it, so you might be able to fit both in.
Okay. In that case, maybe later would you hold the camera for me a little bit? Oh, after you do the things, yeah. Yeah. 那我们我只是想要让他帮我们拿纸箱子，帮我们拿个白板，这样子。
These are all empty.
好啊，好。We would like to have a bye-bye session with you too. Thank you.
Pictures on TripAdvisor.
It has been a really wonderful, trip. Oh, sorry. Don't want to trip that.
Do you want me to take a picture of you?
Oh, no worries. We can just do the selfie style. Yes, say bye-bye to the phone. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Cool. Are you taking yours? Yeah.
Yes. Damn, bro. Damn, bro. 我的 bro 不喜欢喝 whisky。没有，还是有点夸张了一点。Oh no， 实在是喝不下了吗？真的、哦，3个都喝光了。
因为这个倒完了。
哦。
这剩小迷，但它太强了，我刚刚喝了一些。
好吧，就这样了。
你先倒吗？
好啊。I love you。